In this video, we configure staging mode and migrate Entra Connect to a new server. Hello everyone, I'm Travis and this is Seraltos. In this video, we deploy Entra Connect in staging mode and then migrate the server from an old server to a new one. This is handy if you want a second instance of Entra Connect for high availability, or you're migrating Entra Connect to a new server. Before that, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. That helps others find this channel and is greatly appreciated. Check out my courses on hybrid identities with Windows 80 and Entra ID, Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows 365 with Intune Management, and my newest course, A Beginner's Guide to the AZ900, available at udemy.com. The links are below, and thank you channel members, your support is appreciated. Back to it, I'm in the process of updating my hybrid lab and documenting the steps along the way. My previous videos included adding new domain controllers in Azure and decommissioning old ones. My last remaining domain controller also runs Entra Connect, which must be migrated before it's removed. To do this, we'll use Entra Connect staging mode. While only one active instance of Entra Connect can sync with Entra ID, a standby instance in staging mode can stay up to date with changes but doesn't export data. This mode is useful for high availability, testing configuration changes, and as in my case, migrating Entra Connect to a new server. Once ready, the new instance can seamlessly take over by disabling staging mode. By the way, if you're only interested in high availability, just follow the steps in this video to create the staging instance and use the migration steps if you need to fail over in the future. Speaking of high availability, the Entra Connect example in this video uses a local SQL Express installation. That can handle up to approximately 100,000 objects. If you have a large organization with more than 100,000 objects, you can use a SQL Server instead. SQL Server and Entra Connect can handle some level of high availability with clustered databases, but the Entra Connect service still needs to be configured for high availability. This is done with a second instance of Entra Connect in staging mode. However, the database is configured either with SQL Express or a full SQL install. It's best for both the active and the staging Entra Connect server to match as closely as possible. You don't want to undersize the hardware or the database on the staging side and run into performance issues during a failover. Also, be sure that auto update is working and keeping the active and staging service up to date. And once the staging server is in place, any configuration changes made to the active or staging instance must be duplicated on the other. They will not stay in sync with configuration changes. For example, if you change the OUs that are synchronized on the active server, the same changes need to be made on the staging server to keep their configuration in sync. And before we go any further, I want to call out that the legacy name Azure AD Connect still shows up in the application. The new name is Microsoft Entra Connect. These two names are interchangeable and refer to the same application. For the demo coming up, we start with an existing installation of Entra Connect using a local SQL Express database. The goal is to migrate Entra Connect to the new server. The new server runs Server 2025 Data Center Azure Edition. It's a domain controller, but that's not required. Many environments may want to deploy Entra Connect on a dedicated server. Entra Connect must be installed on a domain-joined computer running 2016 or later. Server 2022 or later is better because 2016 is in extended support. It requires .NET 4.6.2 or newer. The server has to have the full GUI, not server core, and can't be installed on Small Business Server or Server Essentials before version 2019. Essentials 2019 and newer can be used with Entra Connect. Also, if you install Entra Connect on its own server, that server should be secured the same as a domain controller. It handles sensitive account activity. Lock the server down the same as a domain controller and don't use it for other services or applications. The process we'll follow in the demo coming up starts by updating the existing Entra Connect server to the latest version. Then we'll export the configuration to use on the new server. Next, we'll install Entra Connect in staging mode on the new server using that exported configuration. We'll look at options to verify the settings match on the two servers. And finally, we'll finish by placing the old server in staging mode and moving the new server out of staging mode, making it the active instance. Let's go to the active server to get started. Here we are in the existing or active Entra Connect Sync server. Let's start by verifying we're running the most up-to-date version. To do that, let's go to Add Remove Programs. Let's take a look at Microsoft Entra Connect Sync. This version is 2.4.129.0. Let's go to the web page and find the current version. This is Microsoft Entra Connect version release history page. As always, there will be a link to this document in the comments below. Let's see what the latest version is. The current release is 2.4.131.0. The note indicates that auto upgrade will run for this release until April 15th of 2025. It's not yet April 15th at the time of recording, but there may be an auto update issue. I'm not going to troubleshoot that since my goal is to migrate off this server. Let's download and upgrade to the latest version. We'll go to the section looking for the latest versions, and there's a couple ways to do it. You can go to the Microsoft Entra Admin Center and download it from there, or you can go to the Microsoft Download Center. Let's select that option and download. That downloaded the file, and I'm downloading this file to a workstation, so I have to copy the installer back to the server. We'll go to the downloads. Let's go back to the server. Let's open up the download directory, and we'll paste it into downloads. And as you can see on the screen, I have quite a history of Azure AD Connect downloads from past upgrades. Once you have it copied over or downloaded from the download site, we can run the MSI to upgrade Entra Connect Sync. We'll give it a minute to finish. Once it extracts the files, it runs the upgrade. We get to the Upgrade Microsoft Entra Connect Sync page, and we'll click Upgrade. We'll give this a minute to run. I'll pause here and come back once it's done. Okay, the upgrade is finished. Now we need to connect to the Microsoft Entra ID service. We do this with the Microsoft Entra ID Hybrid Identity Administrator or a global admin account. It autofills with the account previously used. We'll click Next. We'll select the account we want to sign in with, add the password, and we'll run the upgrade. Here again, this could take a minute. I'll pause here and come back once it's done. And that's complete. We can exit. Let's go back to Add Remove Programs. Microsoft Entra Connect Sync is now running 2.4.131.0, and that is the latest version. We'll close that. Let's open up PowerShell, and we'll start an Entra Connect Sync synchronization with the command start AD sync cycle, and we can close that. That is how we upgrade the active instance of Entra Connect Sync. Next, we'll export the configuration. Start by opening the current instance of Azure AD Connect or Entra Connect. The names may vary due to the name change from Azure AD to Entra ID. We'll select Configure, select View or Export Current Configuration, and Next. If we scroll down, notice that it's using the local database. It's not using a full SQL server for this deployment. If it was using a SQL server at the original or active version, you'd probably want to match that configuration at the staging server. Most people use a SQL server if the number of objects in the database exceed the recommendation for the local DB. And if high availability is the goal, use a different SQL server, or at least make sure the SQL server is on a failover cluster. Okay, let's go back to Export Settings. Once we click Export Settings, we get a path. Make a note of that path. In this example, it's C Program Data AAD Connect. The file name starts with Exported Synchronization Policy and has a timestamp. We'll save it, and we can exit Microsoft Connect Sync. Next, let's open File Explorer. We'll go to C Program Data AAD Connect. Look for Exported Synchronization Policy. Locate the one with the correct date, and we'll copy that. Save that file. We'll use it in an upcoming step. Let's move over to the new server to continue. Here we are logged into the new server. Next up, we'll install Entra Connect Sync on this server and configure it as a staging server. Then, in an upcoming step, we'll convert it to the active server. Be sure that the configuration JSON file we exported previously is available on this new server. Here I have it in the document directory. Under downloads, I have Entra AD Connect Sync. This is the same version we downloaded previously to upgrade the last server. If you need the installer, that's available in the link below. We'll run the installation. There's some waiting time as we install this. I'll pause the video for that and come back once it's ready. At the welcome screen, we'll agree to the terms and continue. We'll select the option to customize. Under Customize, we can import synchronization settings. We want to select that, and then we'll browse to that JSON file. This example, it's under Documents. This is the file we got from the other server. From Install Required Components, we also have the option to modify settings on this page that are not part of the configuration. For example, if you're using an existing SQL server, you can specify it here, or you can select an existing service account. I'll leave those as default for this example and click Install. We'll give this a minute to finish. Next, we have the sign-on methods. This example uses password hash synchronization. If you're using pass-through authentication or federation, you can select that option here. And also enable single sign-on if that's enabled on the active or original Entra Connect Sync installation. This example, it's not. We'll click Next. Here we're connecting to Microsoft Entra. We'll sign in with either the Entra ID Hybrid Identity Administrator or a global admin. We also have to enter in credentials for the local Windows AD. As stated on the screen, at this point, we can either create a new AD account to allow for synchronization, or use an existing account if one's already configured. If we use an existing account, we have to add the credentials for that account. If we create a new AD account, we have to add enterprise admin credentials. Those admin credentials will be used to create the new account. That's the option this example will use. Once the credentials are entered, we'll click Next, and we get to the Ready to Configure screen. Now, by default, it detected that there was already a synchronization that took place recently, and it gives us the message to avoid synchronization conflicts, do not deploy more than one active server. So we do already have an active server. It automatically selected Enable Staging Mode. With that option selected, it runs a synchronization to keep the database up to date, but it doesn't export any of that information or update any information in Entra ID or on the local Windows AD. We also have the option to start the synchronization process when configuration completes. Again, it won't actually update anything, but it's going to keep track of changes on the local and remote directory. So let's click Install. This will take a minute to finish. Again, I'll pause here and come back once it's done. Okay, completed, and everything looks good. We've got a couple messages, but they all look okay for this install. Once we're done, we'll click Exit. Let's open up Azure AD Connect, which is actually Entra Connect Sync. We can go to Configure. If we go to View or Export Current Configuration, here we can see the details of this new staging server. Let's go to Previous, and notice the message at the bottom that indicates we're in staging mode. We can close Entra Connect Sync, and now we have Entra Connect Sync in staging mode on the new server. Next, we're going to verify the configuration. The Microsoft documentation suggests using the CS Export Analyzer on the active and staging server to view the changes that will be exported. I'll add the link below. I ran that, but this is a small lab. There were no changes in the results to use as a comparison. Instead, we'll use the Azure AD Connect configuration documenter to compare and verify the configuration. The link is below. A word of caution about this tool. It's old. The latest release is from 2020. Entra Connect Sync runs similar today as it did back then, but I don't know how well this has been maintained over the past 5 years. I think it's still useful enough to walk through using it in this video. In production environments, I suggest using it with the CX Export Analyzer tool. With that said, you can either follow along or skip ahead to the section on migrating to the new server. To get started, we'll download the latest version of the application and extract the zip file. We can find the releases under How to Use the Tool, and we'll download. We can close the browser, and we'll extract the zip file. You can change the path if you'd like. This application works by comparing two sets of configurations, the source or production and the staging or pilot. If we go into the extracted files under Data, there's an example for Contoso. There are pilot and production files under that. We're going to create a similar file structure for our environment. So we'll go back to Data, add a new folder, and we'll give this folder the name of the directory or the company we're working with, Seraltos for this example. Under that, we'll add a pilot folder and a production folder. Again, pilot is for the staging server, production is for the current or active Entra Connect Sync configuration information. Next, we'll open PowerShell and use the get AD sync server configuration, specifying the path to output the folder. And just to clarify, we're running this on the staging server. So we're first running the command to get the pilot information or the configuration from the staging server. Once that's ran, we can close PowerShell. Now if we go into pilot, that generates 3 folders of configuration settings for the pilot directory. Let's get the same information from the active production server next. We'll go to the production server and open PowerShell. Run the same get 80 sync server configuration command, only specifying a local path. This example will output the configuration to a production folder in the documents directory. Let's go to the production folder on the active production server. There they are. Next, we'll copy these 3 folders. Now that I've copied them, let's go back to the staging server where we're running Azure AD Connect configuration documenter. Under Data Seraltos, we have Pilot, which we already populated. Let's open Production, and we'll paste in those 3 folders we copied from the production or active server. We now have the production and staging configuration in the Documenter tool. Next, we need to update the command file that runs the comparison with the organization's file path. Let's go back to the Azure AD Connect Sync Documenter directory. Make a copy of the Azure AD Connect Sync Documenter contoso.cmd file and change the file name to reflect your organization's name. Next, we need to edit that file. Let's open the file with Notepad. We'll select Edit, and we'll just change the paths from Contoso to Seraltos for this example. If you're following along, make sure you use the directory that you created for the pilot and production folder. We'll save and close. Next, we'll open a command prompt. We'll navigate to the Documenter directory. This example, it was in Downloads under Azure AD Connect Sync Documenter. You should see the Azure AD Connect Sync Documenter command file with the organization name you specified. Let's run that. That will run the comparison and build a report. We can close the command prompt. And now under Report, we have our organization's report. This is a fairly lengthy list of settings. It's a great reference, but a little bit lengthy. To view the difference between production and pilot, check the option to only show changes. This will show only the differences between the 2 configurations. Many of the differences are items like dates and user accounts. Even staging mode set to true is listed. Most of these make sense on why they're different. Review and update any settings on the staging server that should be the same as production. If you do make changes, you'll need to re-export the configuration from the staging server and run the report again to verify the changes. That's great. Now our staging server is configured with the same settings as the production server. If you are doing this for high availability and you make changes to the production server in the future, the same changes need to be made on the staging server. They will not keep in sync with each other as settings change. If you just want a second staging server for high availability, you can stop here. The following steps will migrate the active server to the new staging server we just deployed. Also, synchronization service will be paused while we migrate to the new server. Please plan changes accordingly. First, we'll start at the older Entra Connect sync server that's active. This step will move the service to staging mode. The order of these steps is important. We don't want 2 Entra Connect sync servers synchronizing to the same Entra ID tenant. This first step will move the existing active server to staging mode. So for a short time, we'll have 2 servers in staging mode, which is better than 2 servers in active mode. Okay, we'll open up the Azure AD Connect wizard. Select the configure option. Select configure staging mode. And next. We'll need to enter the credentials with an account that has hybrid identity administrator or the global admin role. So we'll log in with that account. Select the box to enable staging mode. Next. We can leave Start the Synchronization Process selected and then click Configure. We'll give that a minute to run. I'll pause here and come back once it's finished. That finished, we can exit. We can verify the staging mode configuration by opening PowerShell and run get AD sync scheduler. And notice the staging mode enabled option is set to true. Also, if we go to Synchronization Service Manager, Any synchronization after making the change should only import. Staging mode will not export configuration changes. Here, the synchronization that took place at 1240 only imported, it did not export. Next, let's go to the new server, the one we deployed in staging mode. Here we are on the new server that's going to become the active server. If we look at Synchronization Service Manager on the staging server, we see it's running synchronization and import, but not export. Again, this is expected for the staging server. Let's open Azure AD Connect. We'll configure staging mode. Next, we have to sign in again. From configure staging mode, we'll clear the box to enable staging mode. And before we go on, as the note at the bottom indicates, ensure no other synchronization services are active. We cannot have two active Entra Connect synchronization services running in the same Entra ID tenant. We'll go next. We can leave start the synchronization process enabled and configure. This again will take a minute. I'll pause here and come back once it's done. Configuration is complete. Staging mode has been disabled on this server. We can exit. Let's open PowerShell. Let's run the command get AD sync scheduler. That shows staging mode enabled is set to false. So that's good. That just verifies we're no longer in staging mode. And if we look at the Synchronization Service Manager, we see it's now exporting configuration changes. We can now remove Entra Connect Sync from the older server currently in staging mode. That is how we add an Entra Connect staging mode server and migrate the active Connect Sync service to that staging mode server. I hope that helps you configure an Entra Connect staging instance and migrate the service to a new server. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.